breaking news. We're back with Diving Deeper, A to Z, and we're your hosts, the Abraham family. My name is Ash, and this is Farzana.
Hello, hello.
My lovely wife. And we just wanted to welcome you back to any of those who've been following along with the podcast. We really appreciate you taking your time and listening to us and giving our voice a chance. This podcast is where we're going to dive deeper into the Bible with an array of subjects from A to Z. So today we're going to start off with A for attitude. Let's start off with the attitudes we should avoid.
Yes, which is the first one is being ungrateful.
All right, ungratefulness.
So we're actually going to be talking about Moses and the Israelites. So this is in Exodus 15 through 17, the story.
Okay.
So this is right after when Moses just freed the Israelites from Egypt and crossed over through the Red Sea. And while they were crossing, the Israelites started noticing things that they don't have anymore, right? So the first thing they did was when they were after the crossing through Egypt, they noticed that there was bitter water. Sorry.
Right.
I'm like trying to remember the story. But yeah, it's bitter water they had, right? And they call it Mara.
The waters of Mara, right?
Yeah. And they're like, how come there's no water to drink? We're so thirsty and stuff like that. So Moses was like, all right, we'll see what I can do. So he talked to God, right?
And God left them hanging?
No, no, God was like, all right, I just flew you, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But he did give them what's it called? He did give them sweet water to drink, right? So after that, they're like, okay, they were fine, and then they started continue traveling.
Right.
Then they noticed that they had no more food, so they were like, we're so hungry. It was so much better being in Egypt because that's where we had even though I was in slavery, but I'd rather have food and housing and all that stuff there, right?
Right.
So Moses was like, why are you complaining to me? I can't do anything. You gotta talk to God. So what did he do? He ended up talking to God, right?
Right. So instead of going and hunting or getting some food or something,
doing it for themselves, they're like, yeah, exactly.
Ungrateful. Okay.
So God was like, okay, you know what? I'm still gonna go ahead and provide for you. So he provided them food called manna, right? It was one of those rare kind of food that lasted forever. Because he was saying it was passed on through generations.
Yeah, it didn't last forever. The thing is, they had to collect it, and whatever they didn't eat that day itself, it would spoil and go bad. So the next day they'd have to go out and collect it again fresh.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Because it was divine. It was coming from heaven.
Yeah.
Literally, when the dewdrops came, and you know how out in the grass there's dewdrops.
Yeah.
When the dewdrops came.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those turned into manna, and people could come and could come and pick it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So after that, he also provided quail too, right? Because from heaven. By the way.
Magical bread wasn't good enough.
No.
They complained again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So no, it wasn't bread. It was quail, right? The eggs.
Quail.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy if you actually take a look at what happened, right? So in the beginning, it's founded, right? They're leaving from Egypt. They're facing a Red Sea in front of them and an army of Pharaoh behind them trying to catch them.
Right.
And they're worried for their lives. So I could get it. I get it when they're like, God help us, But God did help them miraculously. Not only did he open up the sea and let them cross safely, but he closed the sea at the exact time to swallow up the whole armies of Pharaoh, so they had no longer anyone chasing them. Yeah. How miraculous is that, right? And you could see, their list of grievances, it becomes more and more petty. And that's how you could tell it's just a bad attitude.
Right.
Because, fine, if you're gonna die, I get it. All right, now it's water, right? Water, I get that too, because it's survival now.
Right.
Oh my God, if we're gonna die, if we're in the desert without water. Mm-hmm. But God provides that for them as well.
Right.
Right? And now, from the water to the food, instead of going and gathering food or gathering some herbs and doing that, now they're complaining about food. God provides them food now, right?
Yeah.
And now it's variety of food. Now food isn't good enough. I need some meat like I had back in the day. And the whole time they're saying, if we don't get these things, it's better to die.
Yeah.
That shows you how a bad attitude, it makes you take things for granted, and it makes you focus on the negatives only.
Right.
Yeah. And that's just such a terrible thing to have.
Yeah. If we see in Numbers 14 through 1 through 4. Right? So give me 1 second.
Yeah. You gonna pull that up?
Yeah, I'm gonna read it in my Buddha.
All right. Perfect.
All right. Let me see Numbers.
Well, Numbers 14, 1 through 4.
Yeah, 14. Okay. Then the whole community began weeping aloud, and they cried all night. Their voices rose in great chorus of protest against Moses and Aaron. If only we had died in Egypt or even here in the wilderness, they complained. Why is the Lord taking us to this country only to leave us to die in battle? Our wives and our little ones will be carried off as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? Then they plotted among themselves, let's choose a new leader and go back to Egypt.
Wow. So it's crazy because this, it shows you how a bad attitude can change your whole perspective, right?
Yeah.
So just to put this story in perspective, this is right after Moses sent out 12 spies. They had crossed the whole wilderness. They've reached the promised land. Now they're looking into the promised land. And Moses tells 12 spies, go check out the promised land and see what it looks like. And 10 out of those 12 spies came back and they were like, oh my God, there are giants there. The animals there are also gigantic, so it's crazy. Like, once we have to fight these guys, we also have to worry about all the animals that could kill us that are gigantic as well. But there were these two guys, right? These two guys, Joshua and Caleb. And these guys, while everybody else with their bad attitude saw something, these guys saw something else, right? And the way that they looked at it, they're like, wait, hold on. You're looking at the armies, you're looking at the wildlife, but you know what? This is the land that God promised us. And in that land, everything is bigger. You're right. But at the same time, there were grapes the size of watermelons, you know? So they saw something good in it, right? And they wanted to go get that. And it's crazy how you could see a bad attitude, it changes everything. And what does God love, right? Because God, those people that had the overcoming spirit, that overcoming attitude, they're the ones that crossed into the promised land. Everyone else did not.
Yeah, didn't they get killed at one point?
Nobody else made it to the promised land.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Only the people that went there and they were ready. Yeah. And they were like, because I have faith in God, that's why it doesn't matter what I'm looking at. I'm looking at it from new eyes. Right. You know? Yeah. So it's awesome. That's awesome.
All right, so let's go to our second bad attitude, which is anger and dejection. So dejection leads to anger, right? So let's look at Abel and Cain's story. So this is a time when, this is like right after, I think
this is
Sarah,
they're the... No. So Cain and Abel is Adam and Eve's kids.
Oh yeah, Adam and Eve's kids.
So right after they left the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, they had 2 sons, right?
2 sons.
Okay, cool, yeah. So this is when Cain brought some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel brought the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel's gift, but not Cain's, and that made Cain angry and look dejected. So God asked him, why are you looking dejected? Yeah. If you do what's right, then watch out. If you don't do what's right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. Oof. But you must subdue it and be its master.
It's trying to control you.
Yeah.
I see that.
So, the reason why God rejected Cain's gift and not Abel's is because Cain, the way his attitude was, he was just giving whatever he has left over, just to show that he's giving.
Going through the motions.
Yeah, going through the motions. Whereas like Abel, he's like, oh, like this is my firstborn. Like these are the best flocks I have. I want to give to you the best portions, you know what I mean? Right. So it's just like the attitude, the way Cain's was, is like that's why God didn't accept his gift. Yeah. You know, so
and it's crazy because that dejection, right? Yeah. It's that attitude of dejection, like, oh man, I wasn't accepted, but he was. And you saw with that verse you read at the end, it says that if you don't control your emotions and subdue them, they're going to try to control you.
Yeah, you know what? And I don't know if I forgot to mention the worst part is that Cain ended up killing Abel.
Right. See, and that's what happened.
That's what happened. This didn't control him.
Correct. Because he didn't subdue his dejection. Yeah, he didn't master that attitude of dejection. Yeah. It turned into anger, and that anger controlled him, and he killed his own brother. Yeah. Right? His brother didn't even do anything to him, but because of his attitude, it controlled him into doing something that he wouldn't normally have done in a clear mind. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. So in Ephesians 4:26-27, it actually says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. Anger. For anger gives a foothold to the devil. Now I will say I understand. Like I never. And this obviously stays between us. But I've obviously never
And
murdered.
all our listeners.
But I never obviously killed someone.
Right.
Well, not obvious to you guys, but obvious to you. You know what I mean?
It's not so obvious to me either. No.
But no, I never killed anyone. But I can understand Kane's like anger. Like when I get angry, and it does get to the point where I'm like, yo, because like growing up, my parents, like especially my dad, he was always angry, and I never understood like, oh, like how come you're so angry? Where unfortunately, like he was obviously like hitting my mom and stuff like that at that time. So I never understood like how can you get so angry to the point where you did that? You can get to that point. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now that I'm older, and now that I'm obviously like I'm sorry, I keep saying obvious, but like I'm paying bills and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I was like the stress that comes with it, and sometimes the anger, it could get to that point where like you just feel like you want to hurt something or you want to break something or something like that. And I was like, wow, I don't like that. Like
that's when you let that anger control you.
Yeah,
right?
like,
it's like you're gonna do things that you didn't think that you could possibly do normally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's scary, honestly. I don't like I'm not even trying, like I am asking God to like help me not get to that point. You know what I mean? Like it was yesterday's kind of thing. Let's not continue doing that forever. You know what I mean? Like let's start mastering this control and listening to the right voice and not to the wrong voice. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. No, and it's so important, and the beauty of it is ask and you shall receive, right?
Yeah.
So the whole goal of all these things is we're identifying these attitudes that it's human nature. This is biblical. There's nothing new under the sun, right?
Yeah.
So every single person out there struggles with one of these things, and some of them more than others. There are things that I struggle with as well, that are in these attitudes, because it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
But if we ask God, God has a way of coming through in changing our perspective, changing our attitude.
Yeah.
That's
why it's good to go to bed, resolving anything. Like, there's no point of leaving things for tomorrow. Whatever it is, like, I don't care if it takes that many hours, get it done. You know what I mean?
Don't let it fester.
Then the devil, what he's going to do is that you go to bed angry, and he's going to continue playing that thing the next day and make you, like,
you're even angrier now.
Yeah, you're even in that, because now you're finding more even reasons to be angry at whatever that situation was.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You have to subdue it. Subdue these emotions, otherwise they'll control you. So that's the most important part, working with it. It's never going to be easy, but that's why it says subdue, because that means you got to wrestle with it. You got to force it down, even though it's going to be pushing back at you. You got to overcome it and push it even harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how you could deal with that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next attitude that we want to talk about is fear. Right. So we should not fear what people are going to do to you, but trust in the Lord. So let's read Proverbs 29:25. Okay, so it says, fearing people is a dangerous trap, but trusting the Lord means safety. So let's look into Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's story. Right. So these were three guys who, at that time, they
were with Daniel, right?
Yeah.
That was Daniel's squad.
Okay, if it looks like I'm reading, I am. I'm reading my private notes.
You got a book of notes here. You cheating.
So this is from Daniel 3:1-30. Okay, so this is King Nebi, I call him, because I can't pronounce his name.
Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar.
King Nebi. King Nebi.
Alright, so King Nebi made a gold statue that time that was like 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and it's set up for everyone to see, right? So he wanted everyone to come to his palace and worship this statue that he just created. So he called all the king officials, the high officials, governors, advisors, and whatnot, right? Mm-hmm. So everyone came to the event, and there was like a herald, which is like the representative of the king.
Yeah.
And he told everyone that when they hear the sound of these XYZ like instruments, they will need to go and bow down to this, go onto the ground and worship the gold statue that King Neb has set up.
Publicly.
So, publicly.
Wow.
Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately thrown into a blazing furnace. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people that came over bowed down to the gold statue. Meanwhile, these three astrologers went to King Neb and told Meshach, what was that? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That
Snitch.
Yeah, and those were three who were charged in the province of Babylon, right?
Yeah.
So they refused to serve King Neb's gold statue, and they didn't want to worship what he created.
Yeah,
right?
because you have to follow only God.
Yeah.
Right? And they knew that they had that dedication.
Exactly, they loved the Lord.
Absolutely.
So he confronted them about it. King Neb confronted them about it, and they said, "We don't need to explain ourselves to you. If we're thrown in the fire, God will be able to save us. Even if He doesn't, we want to make it clear that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up." So that made King Nebi furious, and he was like, "Who are these guys? You know what I mean? They're not gonna worship what I just created."
Yeah. When you're a king, you have that God complex.
Exactly, you have that.
It's me,
pride,
and you're under me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. So he told his people, he's like, okay, throw these three into into the furnace, right? So when he ordered them, he saw when they were in the furnace that there was another person standing, and he was asking his people, he's like, hey, wasn't there three people? Why isn't a fourth one there, right? So when I forgot to mention, by the way, that when they went into the furnace, they were fully clothed, right? They had the clothes and everything like that. So when King Neb asked them to take those three guys out,
they're like, "Who's the fourth guy?" Yeah, he's like, "Open that up, hold on."
And when they came out, they saw he saw that they were fully still not burned at all.
Wow.
They were completely fine. And by the way, the fourth guy was not there, and he was like, "Oh, your God is actually a really strong, powerful God."
Isn't that crazy too? Because it shows you, right, when you're willing to walk through the fire for God, God's willing to walk right there with you.
He's going to be protecting you in that fire.
He's right there with you, right? They saw 4 people in there.
Yeah.
God was right there with them. Or he had one of his angels right there with them, right?
Yeah.
But you ain't walking through it alone.
Yep.
And so that just shows you right there. Normal people, right? They'd be terrified. Mm-hmm. And that's that other attitude.
They'd be scared. They were like, okay, I'll worship this one.
Yeah, and that's the attitude we're talking about right now. Fear, right? Fear allows you, everybody else that was there in Babylon, they were like, oh, you know what? The king said it. If not, we're going to be put to death. So whether I think that he's a god or not, whether I want to worship him or not, because these guys were people that were just conquered by them, right?
Yeah.
So now they're taken over by these new people. Mm-hmm. They don't know who they are. And now they're saying to worship them, and they're probably terrified because they just got slaughtered. They're under control of the new people now. So they're like, you know what? Let's just do what they say. Yeah. Otherwise they could do something to us. Absolutely, right? And it works till today, right? If the government says something and they have consequences behind it, you see people fall into line immediately.
You mean like COVID?
Yeah. Like everything, absolutely. Look at that.
I was gonna say it.
Absolutely.
That was a perfect example.
It's true. If the government says something, then you know what? You have to follow it or fear of the consequences. Mm-hmm. But this shows here that, you know what? You don't have to fear. When God makes a promise to you, you don't have to fear. And he even shows in Genesis 15, verse 1, right? God made a promise to Abraham, and this is the Abrahamic promise, and he also said he's going to make him have children, many nations, right? The father of many nations, and he was an old man with no kids, and God made that promise to him, right? And in that promise also, he said here in Genesis 15:1. Sometime later, the Lord spoke to Abraham in a vision and said to him, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I will protect you, and your reward will be great." Mm-hmm. So it shows right there. He said, "Do not be afraid." Right. Obviously, there's going to be tons of things we're worried about, right? Day to day, you talked about it. Things that can make us mad, things that can make us dejected,
anxious, or anything like that. Even,
absolutely. But he said, "Do not be afraid of any of those things, because I'm with you and your reward is going to be great." So that promise right there shows you that if you stay the course and you trust God instead of listening to fear, he will always take you down a safe path. Right. It might not seem safe, but you know what? When he's with you, it's safe. That furnace didn't seem safe to anybody. Right? But when God was with them in that furnace, it was a safe place. And they walked there with faith. Yeah, and it shows also how powerful God is too. Absolutely. So that shows you, right? Fear is defeated by faith. Yeah, let me say it again for the people in the back that didn't hear me. Say it one more time. Fear is defeated by faith. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about these positive attitudes, right? And our Christian mindset should come with a new attitude.
Right. Yeah. So let's look at Philippians 1:20-25.
Okay.
Right. So it says, "For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ as I have been in the past. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ whether I live or die. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better. I'm torn between two desires. I long to go and be with Christ, which would be far better for me. But for your sakes, it is better that I continue to live. Knowing this, I am convinced that I will remain alive so I can continue to help all of you grow and experience the joy of your faith."
Wow. That's so on point in so many ways. Like, Paul was that dude, you know what I'm saying? Because he just said that right now, and this is how much he loves God, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I love God so much that I don't even care if I die. Actually, not even do I not care if I die, but I can't wait till I die.
Yeah.
Because once I'm gone from here, I'm going to be with God.
Yeah.
And that's what I ultimately want.
Yeah.
But he loves everyone else around him so much that he was like, since I can't just die, while I'm here, I'm going to make sure I do the next best thing, and that's share with you guys the good news, right? And when you listen to Jesus, even back in the day, he simplified the 10 commandments into 2 commandments. Love nobody else more than God.
Yeah.
And love your neighbor as you love yourself. So he loved God so much that he wanted to be with him as an ultimate goal. And secondary, he loved himself, so he wanted to make sure that other people around him felt that love as well. And the only way to do that is to share
The
God,
news.
right?
Yeah.
Because you know why? God is love.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And it shows that, it changes the attitude. Everybody's attitude, right? When you have that revelation of Christ, it changes your attitude from like caring about these things that like, everyone chases, material things, wealth, power, fame, those kind of things. It changes your focus from that to God.
Yeah.
And then it really changes your whole priorities. Everything has changed, right?
It's so true, because like literally, I used to be like so scared of like death. Because I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen like after
you die. Yeah.
And then when I came to Christianity, I was like, oh, like this is actually exciting. Like I don't have to worry about, like in Islam, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna go to heaven or hell. I don't know how many goods and bads. You gotta
weigh it out.
Yeah, weigh it out, because like their kind of thing is like, oh, if you do as long as you do more good than bad, then you don't spend as much time in hell.
Wow.
And then I come into Christianity, I was like, oh, that's a lie. Once you go to hell, you're in hell.
Yeah,
Like, you can't get out.
Yeah.
So when I found this out, I was like, okay, like this is worth it for me to build this relationship with Christ, you know? And
absolutely.
not only that, like when you met me, I was all about like money hungry, right?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted my Lamborghini, I wanted my mansion, I wanted
You thought I was so weird because I was like, yeah, I mean that stuff is cool, but I'm not really worried about
get
it.
Get it together. I thought we're on the same page. But I'm so glad, because now it's like, now learning about these, I'm like, I'm not chasing for those things. Now I'm kind of like, oh, I'm looking at a longer term.
Yeah.
People think like, oh, you're not chasing these things, so you must be small-minded. But I'm like, no, I'm actually way bigger than you think I am. Because this is towards heaven. You know what I mean?
And you even hear this like attitude here in the world, right? Like you heard Biggie say it, right? More money, more problems. So they even know that with more money comes more problems, but now they're sitting here and still chasing it, right? But with that new attitude, we realize that the ultimate wealthiest you could be is being with God.
Right.
Yeah. And it changes everything. And like another way to say this is, the parable that Jesus gave us, the Good Samaritan story, right? So the regular attitude, this guy got beat up, he got thrown on the side of the road, he's half dead, bleeding, bloody, and a priest walks by. And a priest looks at him and he was like, oh no, I'm not touching that. If I touch that guy right now, then I'm ceremonially unclean and I'm going to church right now to go perform a service. So definitely can't do that. He crossed the street. He left that dude dying there across the street, right? And you know what? That's acceptable, because everyone that knew in that culture, they're like, yo, the priest isn't gonna touch that guy. He has to go to like synagogue right now.
That's crazy.
So second dude, same thing. He's just a regular Jewish guy, right? But he was like, nah, if I touch him, I'm ceremonially unclean, and I can't go to sanctuary to the synagogue to listen to what the pastor got to say. So he crossed the street too. Now Samaritan, who these guys are not even on good terms with, they looked at each other like, ugh, that guy. This guy saw someone in need and he went out of his way, not only patched him up, took him to an inn, told the innkeeper, here's some money, I'll be back if I owe more for this guy, don't worry about it, I'll pay it, take care of this guy.
Yeah.
And that's someone that they're not even culturally supposed to like each other.
Yeah.
You know? But that shows, and Jesus told us this story, and not to show us that, oh, we should be a different culture than we are, but to highlight that this guy's attitude was, if somebody's in need, I'm going to help them.
Yeah, no
it
matter
shows
what
that love, that, you know, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
And like, that just shows that you have to have it's contradictory to what you normally go to. But if you have a new attitude, you get that through a Christ-like attitude, right?
Yeah, and I appreciate it because I want to be like that. You know what I mean? I want to be able to love so much that you're like, wow, like if this changes you, great. You know what I mean? If it doesn't, it's fine. It's like it helps. Like it makes me happy either way that I still was able to help you out. You know what I mean?
Right. So we talked about having a new attitude, right? What kind of new attitude will we have?
Yeah.
Best way to do it, if you're like, yo, if I become a Christian, I need to have a new attitude.
Yeah.
Best way to do it is to find out what Christ's attitude is like, right? So what was that? If we imitate Christ's attitude, it helps us change everything up. So now let's read Luke 22:39 to 42.
Okay, Luke. So it says, then accompanied by his disciples, Jesus left the upstairs room and went as casual to the Mount of Olives. Then he told them, pray that you will not give into temptation. He walked away about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, Father, if you are willing, please take this cup of suffering away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine.
Absolutely. So you see here that when Jesus was praying, he went and sat down and he's by himself now. And this is where he had that prayer where he had sweat drops of blood coming from him because he was so stressed out.
Yeah.
You know, he knew that what was coming in front of him is that he'd have to sacrifice his life, that he was going to give his life. And he did not want it. And he was like, God, take this cup away from me. Like, I don't want it. But if it is your will, then I'll do it. Yeah. So you saw how the human nature was shown there. Like he was like, nah, I don't want it. I don't want to do it. Like I'm God. I could say the word and the angels will come down and take care of all of this for me. I don't want to do it. But then you saw his divine nature come out, the new attitude come out, where he was like, you know what? Regardless of what I want to do, this is God's will. And if God's will is for me to do it, then I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my will aside and do that. And that just shows you that, like, that's the kind of attitude that we have to have. We have to keep our eyes on the will of God instead of doing whatever we want.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it also takes a level of humility, right? He was humble. He was just like, this is what I want. And everybody that knows anyone with an ego, like when they want something, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
Right? But he was humble enough to put his own ego aside.
Yeah.
And follow what he knew he had to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this is what helps take away that fear, the anger, the dejection, is when we focus on Christ and how he did it.
Yeah.
How did he do it? Focus on God.
Yeah.
That's it. And God even says, cast all your cares on him and he will care for you. So you don't have to worry about it anymore because God's going to take care of that. He's going to care about it. And when he cares about it, trust me, he can actually do something about it. When we care about it, sometimes we can't do nothing about it anyway. So why care about it anyway?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
The next thing we'll do is we'll read John 15:3.
Oh, 15:13.
15:13. Sorry, I said 3. That's my bad. That one's on me. I'm going somewhere. Trust me.
It says, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends.
Boom. So that's the other attitude right there. It's not even like, oh, cool, you know, like that's my friend. That's my homie, we'll hang out. Yeah. It's like, you got to show a radical kind of love because that's the kind of love that God is. God is that radical, unconditional love. So when you have a friend there, he's like, I'll even lay my life down for you because that's the kind of love that needs to be shown. And it's crazy because everyone normally just wants to, once again, look in your own interests and not look out for anything else. You know, I got my own stuff to worry about. Like, I go to work in New York City. I work in Midtown.
Exactly.
You know, so
Everyone in New York minds their business.
Absolutely. Like when I'm
You're
walking
someone getting
there,
hurt, no one cares.
my eyes are down, my headphones are in, my sunglasses are on. You don't know if I'm paying attention
I feel
or not.
so guilty because like sometimes like I want to help out, but then I'm like, you just never know. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? Like it's tough.
No, it is
tough to do that to be
honest. It is. And that's why it's so radical because it goes against the grain.
Yeah.
You know? And it's something that I got to work on too. I need to be able to do that, you know,
selfless love.
Selfless, exactly. Put yourself aside and do it. And that humility and that, you know, love for others, when other people see that, because we just talked about how different it is, it shines to other people.
Yeah, and it really does make a difference. Even like the friends we have now that came for us when we were going through a tough time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which like he's gonna explain to you guys later. But when we were going through a tough time, it was like those people that are our friends that like showed up when no one else would, that really made a difference. They were like, I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's a different kind of reaction.
Yeah,
right?
Like you love us that much.
Absolutely.
Now it makes me want to love you even more.
For sure.
So, like you were saying about the humility thing, also what God also does is He will reward the meek. Right. So let's read that in Matthew 5:5. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth.
Wow.
So, you know about the whole Pharisee and tax collector story? With that one, there were like two people that were praying at that time, right? Which is the Pharisees and the tax collector. The Pharisee had like a great confidence in their righteousness and was taking pride in not being the sinner. He was telling God like, oh, I don't cheat, I don't sin, I don't commit adultery. He compares himself to the tax collector and he was like, oh, like I'm not like him, right? Meanwhile, the tax collector is like beating his chest and he's like looking down on the ground. He doesn't even look up to God. He's like, man, God, I'm so sorry. He was like, asking for mercy, and he was just being like, in humility. He's like, hey, I'm a sinner. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. I hope you can give me some forgiveness.
Right.
And he returned home justified before God.
Right.
Right.
The Pharisee who's exalting himself in a prayer, like, that's not what prayer is for. That shows that like religious side. It's showing that me side. He's like boasting on himself. Yeah, exactly. Right?
It's like even though we sin differently, like even though he doesn't sin the same way as the tax collector, he's still a sinner at the end of the day.
Correct.
And he's not realizing just because even though it's a small sin, it's still a sin.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
And he's trying to like, you could tell like just by saying, oh, I don't do what he does. It's like, that doesn't justify what you're doing.
Yeah.
Though. You could be doing something small, but our goal is not to compare ourselves to other people and see who's better.
Yeah.
It's to compare ourselves to Christ and strive to be like that, because I guarantee you it's a lot higher of a standard.
Oh my gosh,
you know
remember
what I'm saying?
when I first came to Christ and I was kind of like comparing myself. I was like, oh, look at this person, look at that person. Like, they're not like Christ-like and stuff like that. It humbled me real quick.
I mean, it's all it is we're not here to look at other people.
Yeah.
Our judgment, it even says in the Bible, if you judge others, God's going to judge you even more harshly.
Yeah.
So you better get ready for that. Like, that's why I judge nobody. I'm like, you know what? God can judge me, but it's not going to be for me judging anybody.
Yeah, because when I really look into myself, I was like, oh, wait, I'm not perfect either. Like, that's something we have to realize, too, is that we're never going to be perfect, and we can't do every little thing because we're always going to fall short of the glory. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's kind of like why Jesus died. Like, not kind of why. That is the reason why Jesus died for us, because we're never going to be perfect. We're always, we can always try to, get better and, repent and ask God for forgiveness and mercy and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, we're always going to fall short, and that's where we need Jesus' help to come in.
Absolutely. And if we stay humble, we can receive that help.
Yeah.
Because it shows there. It even shows that, when you stay humble, God will raise you up, right? He praised the tax collector. When you stay humble, God will raise you up. And if God sees that you need to learn humility, He'll gladly teach you that.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
So in Jesus' wedding parable, right?
Yeah.
He even tells his disciples that he noticed that everyone who was invited to that dinner party was trying to sit in the seats of that was located at the head of the table, right? So they were trying to get close to the front, right? So he said, when you're invited to a wedding feast, don't sit in the seat of honor. There might be someone that's more honorable than you. Mm-hmm. So it's best to sit all the way in the back. And so, when the person who invited you, if they see you and they want you to come up, they will show you, hey, come up into the front and sit next to me. And whoever is sitting here, he doesn't want you to sit here. You're going to be humble real quick and go back in the back.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So rather than exalt yourself,
Yeah.
just stay humble and let other people do that. Let God exalt you instead of trying to exalt yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
It shows that if we leave our pride behind, it's beneficial in many ways. It won't let you leave like disappointed because your expectations aren't being met or anything like that. You're kind of like, okay, you know what? It is what it is. Like, let me work on myself and be who I am. You know what I mean? And let God, let God bring me up instead of me doing it my way. You know?
Right. You could even see in Hebrews 12, verse 2, it says, it says that let us run this race that God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross and disregarding his shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor by God's throne. So you see how he endured the cross, all that, people just going against him, and he had to humble himself. He had to really put aside his ego and get berated and beaten, and he died on the cross, right? But because he endured that and disregarded his shame, he's now seated on the place of honor. So that shows you that through being humble, you could receive the highest honor.
Yeah.
And that's what we're called to do as well.
Okay, so to sum everything up, let's combat a negative attitude with a Christ-like mentality. Okay? So first one is when we're being ungrateful, we need to remember 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. So it says, always be joyful, never stop praying, be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. 2, when we feel fearful, we should rest assured that God is our strength. So this is in Habakkuk?
Habakkuk.
Habakkuk 3:17-19. It says, even though the fig trees have no blossoms and there are no grapes on the vines, even though the olive crop fails and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign God is my strength, he makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. Next, in order to defeat a dejected mindset and avoid anger, we need to have a cheerful heart. So in Proverbs 17-22, it says, a cheerful heart is a good medicine, but a broken spirit saps a person's strength. So we saw that with Cain and Abel, right? And the last one is when negative things are going on in your life, we're going to rejoice in the Lord, be joyful and rely on God to be our strength. So Ash actually has a crazy testimony that he would like to share how God has helped him with his journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, within the last year, we went through some hard times. I found out that I had cancer, and it kind of rocked my world, because at first I was like, it's fine, I'm good.
And it started with like a nosebleed.
Yeah.
Right? It was like nothing.
It went from being a nosebleed and then turning out to more, and then my eyes started bulging out. And when we finally found out what it was, the doctors told me that I'm have to have surgery, and it's going to be a very complicated one. It's risky, and I would have to lose my eye most likely. So I mean, faced with all of those things, like there's a lot of changes going on at once, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed, like there's something huge in front of you that you can't overcome. But I knew there was nothing really I could do, and I knew that I've leaned on God before in the past, and when I was way out of my depth, he was always there for me. And so I did it again. I was like, I'm gonna lean on God.
Yeah,
and
you were like trying to save the eye, but you weren't able to, right? It was like it was that complicated where you couldn't even get a prosthetic eye.
Yep.
Right. So you had to go through it's either lose the eye or stay with cancer, pretty much.
Right. It's going to be a lot harder to make sure the cancer is completely removed. So I was like, you know what? I have faith. It doesn't matter. I put my trust in God. Like, do whatever you have to do. And just doing that allowed me to, instead of being someone that's like moping around and being in my feels, and like it was a very difficult time. I was struggling. I faced emotions that I've never really faced before. And that's not to say I haven't been through difficult things in the past, but when your whole life gets turned on its head like that, it really shakes you. But having God on my side, it allowed me to keep my joy. It allowed me to keep smiling. And the one thing that people keep on telling me whenever they see me is like, dude, regardless of what you've been through, like, you still haven't changed. How is that possible?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
You
All
know?
the nurses loved him. I don't know, all the people there, because he was always like, he's getting his shots, but like he's the only one that's like laughing while I was going through it.
You can't take my joy because my joy is in the Lord, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me of that story of the children of Israel when they were going to conquer Jericho for the first time, and everyone's like, you can't do that. Jericho was fortified. They had these huge walls that like no one could get through, you know, and they knew that they had to get through there. God promised them the victory, so they did something that no one really thought about doing before that. For 7 days straight, they went around and they were celebrating. They were blowing their trumpets. They were rejoicing. They were making a glorious sound to the Lord. And through that rejoicing, right? Everyone that's went against them with weapons and tried to take that wall down, like it wouldn't happen. But just rejoicing in the Lord made those walls crumble. You know, and that's exactly how it felt for me. It was like I had this huge obstacle in front of me, but I knew that God promised me the victory. So instead of moping around, I just gave God the glory, you know, and in doing that, that gigantic obstacle turned out to be just rubble under my feet. And that's really like, that's what having that mentality does. And like, thank God for that in that one scenario. But I mean, I got a lot more to, you know, there's a lot more attitude that we need adjusting.
And it was like nice because it's like, oh, like even though you lost like your sense, right? Like you lost your smell.
Well, I mean, I still have 20/20 in the other eyes. I ain't complaining.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. But even though you lost your sense of smell, you still was able to get your taste back. And luckily, on July 7th, you know, 7/7, the perfection of
day of perfection.
The number of perfection is the day you actually found out that you got healed. And they took he was actually NED classified, so that's no evidence of disease. So thank God for that, because you know, like instead of you allowing this new situation to bring you down and get depressed and mope around, I saw you like honestly had the best attitude. Like honestly, there's sometimes you don't even look like you're having pain and you're going through it. I'm like you just look like you're just always like laughing, happy, you're fine.
I mean, hey, me complaining isn't gonna make anything different, right? So why bring it down?
Because I'm like, I've never been through a situation, so it was kind of like interesting to see, you know. Oh, and you know what? Because of that good attitude, you know, like a proverb says in Proverbs 17:22 we just read, right? A cheerful heart is a good medicine, and that's honestly what healed you as well too. Like you're quickly moving. Like they were saying, oh, it can take for like months sometimes, and you're just healing up so quickly, quicker than anyone they've seen so far.
Hey,
you know, and that's why
they call God the great physician, right?
Exactly.
The people here can only do so much, but the rest is in God's hands. And you know what? I'll take that, because there's very few things that we can control. And when you can't control it, instead of worrying about it, give it to God.
Exactly. That's a good attitude you have. All right, guys. So that's all for today. If you stayed with us for the entire episode, we just want to give you guys a thank you so much for choosing your time to spend time with us today. There are 2 things that we would love for you guys to do. First is follow us on Instagram at Diving Deeper A to Z. We would love to hear what God has done or is doing in your life. And any prayer requests you guys have, please send it to us. Or any questions you have, send it to us as well. It doesn't have to be this topic related. It could be any topic. And 2, hit the follow button and the bell so y'all can be notified for the next episode. Until next time, bye!
Bye!